Not every Marvel character was born a legend. Some were rushed experiments, forgotten villains, and one-shot heroes that failed almost instantly. But those failures didn't disappear. They evolved. A throwaway villain became the blueprint for Magneto. A bizarre Golden Age misfire inspired a modern fan favorite. And one of Marvel's most mocked characters accidentally shaped a billion-dollar franchise. So, which forgotten Marvel flops secretly gave rise to the heroes we know today? These are 10 failed Marvel characters that secretly inspired iconic heroes. At number 10, Dr. Droom to Doctor Strange. Dr. Droom, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, debuted in Amazing Adventures issue 1 in June 1961. Anthony Droom was a respected American psychiatrist who traveled to Tibet, where an ancient lama granted him mystical powers to combat supernatural threats. Marvel intended him to be their first major Silver Age mystic hero. However, the character's stories mixed simple monster-of-the-week plots with basic magic tricks, mostly hypnosis and illusions, lacking depth or memorable villains. An unusual twist in the origin magically altered his appearance to look Asian, a choice later considered awkward rather than intriguing. By the end of 1961, the series was retitled, and Dr. Droom was quietly dropped from Marvel's lineup after only a handful of issues. But the idea didn't completely disappear. A few years later, Steve Ditko pitched a similar sorcerer concept that evolved into Doctor Strange. Stan Lee loosely reused elements of Droom's framework, giving it a stronger story and personality. In failure, Droom unknowingly opened the door for Marvel's true Sorcerer Supreme. At number 9, Him. Him debuted in Fantastic Four, issue 66 to 67 in 1967, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. A group of rogue scientists called the Enclave engineered the perfect human life form in a golden cocoon. When he emerged, he was a godlike being known only as Him. He rebelled against his creators, left Earth, and briefly fought Thor before retreating back into his cocoon. But there was no personality, no mission. Him was more a concept than a character, and Marvel didn't know what to do with him. After a few appearances, he was shelved. Years later, writer Roy Thomas and artist Gil Kane gave Him a second life. In Marvel Premiere Issue 1, 1972, he emerged reborn as Adam Warlock, named by the High Evolutionary and gifted the Soul Gem. Now he had a purpose, a messianic hero for a new world. Under Jim Starlin, Warlock became a complex cosmic savior, fighting the Magus and later Thanos. From a failed idea, Marvel created one of its greatest cosmic legends. At number 8, the Vision, Arcus. The original Vision, Arcus, debuted in Marvel Mystery Comics issue 13 in November 1940, created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. He was an alien lawman from another dimension who appeared on Earth through a scientist's experiment. Cloaked in smoke, with powers over cold and mist, Arcus hunted criminals in eerie, supernatural-themed adventures. His design, green and red with a high-collared cape, bore an uncanny resemblance to the later Vision fans know today. But Arcus never became a star. He wasn't a headliner like Captain America or Submariner. By 1943, the comic market had shifted and his stories ended, causing the character to fade into obscurity. In 1968, Roy Thomas revived the name for a brand new character. This Vision was no alien lawman, but an android built by Ultron introduced in Avengers issue 57. He shared the spooky entrance from smoke aesthetic, but gained a rich emotional arc, joining the Avengers and falling in love with Scarlet Witch. Where Arcus vanished, the android Vision became a true Marvel icon. At number 7, Ghost Rider. The original Ghost Rider debuted in Tim Holt issue 11 in 1949, created by Ray Crank and Dick Ayers. He was a masked cowboy vigilante who wore a glowing white costume, rode a pale horse, and terrified outlaws by pretending to be a ghost. His adventures mixed Western action with spooky theatrics, making him stand out from typical gunslingers of the era. He had some popularity in the early 1950s, even starring in his own title. But when publisher Magazine Enterprises folded in 1956, the character vanished. Marvel briefly revived him in 1967 with a near-identical Western version, again called Ghost Rider, but Western comics were fading in relevance. After 7 issues, he was renamed Phantom Rider to free up the title. In 1972, Marvel reused the name for a completely new character. Johnny Blaze, a stuntman who sold his soul and became the flaming-skulled Ghost Rider. Where Carter Slade faded into obscurity, Johnny Blaze turned the concept into a supernatural legend recognized worldwide. At number 6, Metallo. Metallo appeared in Tales of Suspense, issue 16 in April 1961, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. In this short sci-fi story, a criminal named Mike Fallon volunteered for an experiment that sealed him inside an invincible metal suit. The armor made him super strong and radiation-proof, turning him into a living weapon. But there was a cost. Fallon needed radiation to survive inside the suit. Without it, he would die. Metallo went on a rampage, robbing banks and freeing prisoners, only to realize his new life was a trap. The story ended with him fleeing, doomed by the very power he craved. He was mostly a one-off cautionary villain, appearing only in rare follow-up anthology stories. But the concept, a man encased in armor, dependent on technology to live, stayed in Marvel's mind. Tony Stark, gravely injured and with shrapnel near his heart, built his first iron suit as both a weapon and a life support device. Metallo was forgotten, Iron Man became an Avenger and a global icon. At number 5, The Shield. The Shield first appeared in Pep Comics issue 1 in January 1940, created by Harry Shorten and Irv Novick. Joe Higgins was the very first American patriotic superhero. He gained super strength and near invulnerability through a special chemical formula. Wearing a Stars and Stripes costume with a big shield design on his chest, he fought Nazi spies and criminals even before the U.S. entered World War II. During the war, the Shield was popular. He had his own title and was the star of Pep Comics. But after 1945, readers lost interest in superhero comics. By the 1950s, his publisher focused on Archie comics instead, and the Shield disappeared. In 1941, Timely Comics introduced Captain America. At first, Cap used a triangular shield that looked almost the same as the Shield's chest symbol. The Shield's publisher complained, so Marvel changed Cap's weapon to the now famous round shield. The Shield was forgotten, but his idea inspired Captain America, who became the true patriotic icon. At number 4, Zenu, the Living Hulk. Zenu first appeared in Journey into Mystery issue 62 in November 1960, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. He was a furry white alien who crash-landed on Earth and hypnotized humans, calling himself the Living Hulk. The story was a typical pre-superhero Marvel monster tale, creepy, self-contained, and never meant to last. After that issue, Zenu vanished, only resurfacing years later as a minor villain. But the name stuck. 2 years later, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby reused Hulk for Bruce Banner's tragic alter ego, a heroic twist on the monstrous brute. This time, the Hulk wasn't an alien menace. He was a man cursed by his own creation, echoing Frankenstein and Jekyll and Hyde. That small shift turned a throwaway name into an icon. Zenu was forgotten, a relic of Marvel's monster era. But without the Living Hulk, there might never have been the Incredible Hulk, the Green Goliath who became one of Marvel's greatest legends. At number 3, The Fly. The Fly first appeared in Adventures of the Fly issue 1 in August 1959, created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. Tommy Troy was a teenage orphan who found a magic ring that gave him the powers of the insect kingdom. He could climb walls, leap great distances, and wore a green and yellow bug-themed costume. Archie Comics hoped he would launch a new wave of heroes, but the series only lasted a few years before fading away. Originally, Simon and Kirby had even called the concept Spider-Man, or Silver Spider, but editors thought kids would dislike a spider hero, so they changed it to The Fly, even making a spider his first villain. Just 3 years later, Marvel's Stan Lee and Steve Ditko introduced Spider-Man. This time, the hero wasn't magic-based, but a relatable science student bitten by a radioactive spider. The Fly vanished into obscurity. Spider-Man became one of the most beloved heroes in the world, fulfilling the potential that the Fly never could. At number 2, Amazing Man to Iron Fist. Amazing Man debuted in Amazing Man Comics issue 5 in September 1939, created by Bill Everett. John Uman was an orphan raised by a secret Tibetan order called the Council of Seven. They trained him to peak human ability, granting him strange powers, like turning his body into green mist. After years of discipline, he left the monastery and returned to the outside world to fight evil. For a brief time, he was a leading Golden Age hero. But when Centaur Publications folded in 1942, his adventures ended abruptly, Like many heroes of that era, he slipped into obscurity. Decades later, Marvel revived the concept in a new way. In 1974, Iron Fist debuted, a young Westerner trained in the mystical city of Kunlun, gaining martial arts mastery and the power of the Iron Fist. The parallels were clear. Amazing Man was forgotten, but his story lit the spark. Iron Fist carried that idea into the modern era, turning a lost Golden Age hero's blueprint into a lasting legacy. At number 1, The Human Torch. Jim Hammond, the original Human Torch, debuted in Marvel Comics issue 1 in 1939, created by Carl Burgos. He wasn't human at all, but an android who could burst into flames. In the 1940s, he was one of Timely Comics' biggest stars, fighting Axis threats alongside Namor and Captain America. He even had a young sidekick, Toro. But after 1944, superhero comics lost steam for a while. By 1954, the Torch's series ended. Timely shifted to romance and horror titles, leaving Jim Hammond forgotten, a relic of a fading era. Then came 1961. Marvel reinvented the Human Torch as Johnny Storm, the fiery teenager of the Fantastic Four. Johnny kept the same powers, but was brash, youthful, and part of a family team. That change made the Torch a hit again, and Hammond's legacy didn't stop there. His android body was later revealed to have been repurposed to create the Vision. His flame died out, but it lit 2 new heroes who would burn even brighter. Not every legend starts strong. Hit subscribe and like button for more hidden Marvel and DC videos, and also press the bell icon so you never miss our next deep dive.